Okay, guys, I'm going to continue. I realized that there was a half an hour offset in James' clock, so the coffee and the pastries will not arrive until half an hour more. So instead of waiting a long time and losing the break, then just wait a bit more. Is that okay? Are you too tired? Yes, it's there. Okay, so to continue, what we had before is we created a custom finder with a crazy expression object. I think that's a good time to explain what expression objects are. But yeah, we created these expression objects that would match all rows against everything. And we used distinct on a custom column to generate this group by. If you use Postgres, it will generate a distinct on, which is, I guess, the correct implementation for SQL. So, expression objects are the way in Cake3 to create raw SQL. So if you know what you're doing, and if you're not a dog like in front of a computer with a tie, and you're not what you're doing, you can use raw SQL to select stuff, or to generate conditions, or to do whatever. Keep in mind that doing stuff like this is a really, really, really bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? SQL injection. So yeah, every time you need a raw SQL because it's too complex, because you are lazy and don't want to use the ORM features or whatever reason, I know you have the reasons, just use query new expression and whatever SQL that you want there. Okay? Just going to roll back this to its previous version, which was text.name. Tag name. Questions, question types, and question options. So one of the questions that he had during the break is what happens if you want to do a deep matching. For example, it was David who asked that. If you have like find by organization, and that organization has a type, and that type has a category, so you go like deep into that, but you only need to kind of have those that match a condition in that very far association. That's very common, and yes, it's possible. So let's do that example. The public function find by option. Option is because we have question type options. Let me just not be lazy. By question, or just by option type. Question option. So the option, and basically what I want to do is get me all options that, or questions that have a type, that have an option that has a label against. So I'm going to go to label zip. name. So query matching, and that would be question types dot question type options. Just put it one line below. Function Q where question type options dot name is name. Is that clear what I'm doing? Same as contain, I just go deeper, use again a query builder, append and condition to it, and now let's try it. Use this. It's called by question option. You can see a lot of inner joins. And if I try this, question options.name, it was labeled, sorry. Yeah. Okay, it's empty because we don't have any option, any type with that. So I'm just changing a question to be the opinion one. And now I have this. That's very cool. Perhaps I should mention a couple gotchas. Gotchas, like problems that you may find. When using contain, it's not that rare that you use the same alias more than once. For example, I don't know, two different tables have tags. For example, articles have tags, and you can also tag the comments. So you have comment belongs to tag, and article belongs to tag. And so you want to contain tag and question dot tags. That's fine with Cake, but there's a gotcha. If that association is in the easy chain, that means those that can be joined, one of the associations will be sacrificed and put into a separate query. The reason is you cannot have duplicate aliases in the same query. So you cannot join twice by tag. So Cake will detect that problem and say, well, one of the queries will have to go in a separate one. So you either rename the association if you want, create another one in the fly and do exactly the same logic, or just live with it. Sometimes you don't need to filter, just get the association. So it's just a gotcha that you may want to have in mind.
So which data sources can you use this on?
You mean as what database types?
Yeah, for instance, or what about NoSQL and all of that?
ORM, object relational mapper. If it's relational, it will work. Otherwise, no. Why? may I ask? Mark.
SQL and NoSQL are so different.
SQL and NoSQL are so different. Can you name 2 NoSQL data sources?
Redis.
Redis is one. Elasticsearch. Okay, we have 2. What are the operations that you can do in Redis? Set key, find key, expire key, C, score, map, ON, key, crazy. Like, it has so many functions and they do so many different things that, well, just call the function if you want, right? Do you need select? Do you need order by? Do you need where? Do you need associations? Can you actually make associations in Redis? No. Elasticsearch. Name me operations on Elasticsearch. You can search. And how many options do search have? Like a gazillion. If I present you with this, hey, you can use Elasticsearch with this. It's like, you're kidding me. Like, Elasticsearch has so many options, so rich, and it can be so, it needs to be fine-tuned for your specific query that doing this makes no sense. Why would you use Redis with this? Or how would it work? Redis is a key value, as memcache is. So I wouldn't use memcache with that. We use a Twitter stream with a select. You cannot do that either. You cannot group by in Twitter stream. You can just get the tweets. Does that make any sense? Okay, what I meant is, what I've shown so far is a query, the query object. That belongs exclusively to the ORM, to the R part, because it produces SQL. It doesn't produce Elasticsearch queries, it doesn't produce Redis commands, it doesn't produce Mongo commands, it just do SQL. That part makes absolutely no sense, in my view, to abstract something that is SQL into something that is no SQL by definition, right? And that is greatly announced as, hey, you don't need to write SQL anymore. Then, oh, I have an ORM that can actually make it write SQL. Makes no sense, right? What it can do is that the table let me see, where is it? Here, the table implements this here. What is a repository interface? A repository interface is a collection of methods that if you implement it, it will make that class appear like something Cake can use as an ORM. And you also have the entity interface, which is all the methods that you need to implement to make something look like an entity. Examples. Non-finished, don't use it, it's not done, it's just a proof of concept. The Elasticsearch plugin. Yes, there is an Elasticsearch plugin for Cake 3. Don't use it yet because it's not done. But you have type. As you may know, for those that have used Elasticsearch before, the equivalent or the repository idea in Elasticsearch is called the type. So it makes sense that type implements repository interface. Whoops. And find is basically using a special type of query. That special type of query, if you want to create a different data source plugin structure that connects to NoSQL, you need to implement repository interface and a query, which basically can be whatever. It doesn't have to comply to group by, select, join, etc. In this case, I just implemented, for the fun of it, that there's an official wrapper for Elasticsearch done in PHP, and you have full access to all functions in that wrapper. And it just, when you get the results, it gets converted to cake entities. And that's it. Yeah.
Would that work the same if you were consuming a remote API?
It would work the same if you implement a collection interface and then, and use the entity interface. If you don't want to implement all the entity methods, we provide for you something called the entity trait. So assuming that there are no special modifications for that data source, and you just want to use entities as normal entities, you just add that trait to your class, and magically it will be implementing the entity interface. So yeah, what this plugin does is, so far you can just use find by key in Elasticsearch, which is quite useless if you use Elasticsearch. But yeah, it's just a proof of concept. Hope that answers your question.
So how many, because you said, right, that if you're on PostgreSQL, it will do a distinct on, right? If it's MySQL, it's going to do a group by instead.
Yeah.
So how many is actually supported?
So far is SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, and Microsoft SQL Server. So quite a few. I have plans in my mind to, at some point, support Oracle. And I don't know more like established database providers that we can use. There's Firebase. It's quite old. It's kind of like a Postgres style. Oracle style. If the need comes, it's quite easy. If you know the specificities of that adapter, to just add like the specific SQL that you need to implement and make everything work. I can just show you how it works, basically. Something worth showing, Mark, that will show how different stuff is constructed? The schema, perhaps? Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally works. The dialects or
Oh yeah, the dialect is a good idea. SQL Server dialect. So we have these classes, actually traits, that implements like the specific stuff of each adapter that will make it like work the same. I'm actually going to show the MySQL adapter dialect. You know, it's in SQL dialect here. Where is group by? Here. So you have access to anything and you can transform stuff. So basically what it does is that if you can find an array in distinct and it's MySQL, then put that distinct inside group by, and that's it. That's quite easy. So you can either go that way, like a translator kind of way, or you can actually put the SQL. For example, one that is complex is the SQL Server. SQL Server doesn't have limit offset until the 2012 version. So you have to do nested queries to get limit offset. So basically what it does here is this. Like if you have limit and offset, you use this. Fetch first row, blah, blah, blah only. Make sense?
there's all the little snippets of the special
Oh yeah, there's also if you need to modify how stuff works, you can just change the order of how stuff is created and special keywords, blah, blah, blah. I hope it's not too boring because it's not a course in internals of the ORM, but if you find it interesting, I'm happy to talk about it. Actually get excited when I talk about it.
Well, like for instance, MySQL and enums, right? It's not supported in 3.
It's not supported, but
So what you do
thanks for bringing that. One of the goals of the ORM from the beginning was that if you want to do something like having enums, which we don't personally want to support because we don't believe in their value, you are able to do that. So maybe I'll do that. Let's create in questions. I'm going to create a text type called whatever, I don't know, like question preferences or preferences, and that's it. It's a text, and it's null, whatever. So now we have preferences. And because I'm in this NoSQL mood, I just want to store preferences. I want to store an array there, because then when I read the array, it will be unserialized. It's going to be awesome. So let's do that. Just going to create a method here. Not going to use the server right now. Just use the console. Just going to add a function, public function, save, or just add preferences. To a ID. I get the entity equals table, or not table, this get ID. I'm going to add some preferences. Entity preferences equals, just add something, foo bar something crazy, and save the entity. Okay, so I'm going to try this just now and see how it fails. Question, so table, add preferences to 1, to the first question. I get basically an error because I'm trying to add an array to something that should be in string. That's not good. So let's fix that. So I'm going to create this folder inside P database type, and I'm gonna create a type, special type. So database is a source database type. It's called JSON type. It's the one we have in the book. JSON type.php. PHP class JSON type extends type. Use cake database type namespace app database type. Okay, just gonna copy it from the book just to save a bit of time. Just copy everything. Okay, it's fatal error. Cannot use type as type because it's already in use, and that's true. There you go. Okay, so I just need to implement 2 functions. One is when I get data from the database, it needs to be put inside an entity that is called toPHP. So I get the value from the database. Then what I need to do is decode it from JSON so it can be put inside the entity. And the other way, if I pass an object, an array, or something that is not a simple string, I just JSON encode it. Good? So I'm going to add to my bootstrap.php here. Maybe run, I don't care. Here. Use this. So I'm telling CakePHP map JSON, like the name JSON, to this class that will handle that column type. And in my question table, I just need to override a small function, protected function, initialize schema, and I receive a schema. It's actually a schema. And I'm going to tell the schema that column type of preferences is JSON. Okay? Yeah. So I'm going to add the use here. Oops. Use cake database schema table, right?
Isn't it ORM table?
No, it's not. Let me see. Table.php is ORM table. Schema table. Yeah, database schema table. As schema for short. Is that clear? I'm importing the class and just renaming it to something that is unique because I'm already using table. And I use this initialize schema, change the column type to something, returning the schema, and now let's see what happens. Console, table R, add preferences to 1, seem to work. Now, what happens if I get 1? To array. Oops, to array. What? Oh, that's a problem in this console. If you get 1 to array. There you go. I have my preferences. They're an array. If I go to the database, in content, it has this. And now we have NoSQL. Cool. Any questions? So you can do the same for enum, for example. Enum is a various implementation. It's just whatever I'm passed, just store that. Whatever I'm passed, just return that.
So what's the reason you guys don't want to use it?
Because there is no reason for that. What is the reason for enum?
Just save a few fields?
You say fields. Okay, well, I'm going to list the common reasons. Yeah? Okay.
I had a question about when you did the overriding of the schema.
Yep.
Is there a reason why you couldn't drop it in the actual initialize method?
You can do that. But yes, there is a reason. Actually, thanks for bringing that up. The reason is that one of the goals of the ORM was it had to be lazy. And the initialize function is not lazy. If you instantiate a table, initialize is called. If you add something to the schema will be read. And I don't want to make a connection to the database just because you instantiate a table. So that function is only called when the schema is asked for the first time. So yeah, that's the reason. You can do it perfectly in the initialize. You can do this schema column type. Yes. So the reasons for enum. It saves space in the database. It's safe having another table with the values. There. Reasons for not having enum. There's no easy way to know what the values are, except exploding by comma all the values, so that's very inefficient. 2, if you have a very, very, very big table, if you want to add another value to that enum, it will take hours. And 3, is not cross-compatible other databases. So the set of fields that we selected for the ORM were those that could be mapped one-to-one in all databases. Enum was not one of them. Enum is...
There's another fun thing. If you insert a value that's outside of the enum, it inserts empty string. It doesn't tell you.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's not like Postgres, that it has enum, like a correct enum, which is a string with a constraint, and it will complain if you try to pass something is not there. You just get empty, which is not in the list of allowed values. Yeah, that's a cool thing. Yeah, so you can do any type. You can use, for example, Postgres has a great variety of different types that are not compatible with everything, but they are actually good. Like money, they have like this very big float type. They even have JSON as a type that you could actually map, and so on and so on. They have geopoint, geometry fields. There's plenty that you could map using the type system in CakePHP by just implementing these 2 functions here, to PHP and to database. Any questions about this?
Could I see bookstore?
Yes,
How to do it?
like this. Okay. So where were we with find? So we have covered a lot about the finders. Maybe we should jump. I'm not sure what time is it. I don't have the clock here. What time is it? 16:30. Can anyone confirm? No. Is how much more? Exactly, that we should go out. Perfect. Now this is the actual time for the break. There's pastry outside and coffee, I guess. So let's go back in 30 minutes, is it? Yeah. Okay, cool. See you in 30.
Could you just go up for a second to the code you added at last, this part? Yeah.
This one,
No, not
the initialize function.
the initialize function.
Okay.